And it's always a huge pleasure to welcome Steve Bone to Pompey Sound. Steve, welcome. Hello. How are you doing? And what did you think about Reading?
Yeah, well, I'm okay, thank you. I'm here, and I'm happy that we started our league campaign in winning fashion. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a bit. Reading didn't go to the Reading game. I will be honest and say that I don't usually bother with early rounds of League Cup. Not that we get to later rounds too often for me to bother with those. Yeah, it was a bit predictable in a way. We were always going to play a weakened team, not a weakened team, but a sort of second string team. You know, everybody who didn't play Saturday was out there, weren't they? Being given a chance to show what they could do. When you make that many changes in one go and bring in a lot of players who haven't been playing in the first team, it's a gamble, and it quite often doesn't work out. I think Reading made a few changes as well, so I don't think it was by any means their strongest, their first choice 11. And from what I've read and what I've seen, it was a little bit lacklustre at times from Pompey. One or two players showed up quite well. One or two looked what they were in terms of their players who were coming back into action after a long period out, injured or whatever, or not selected. So not that much of a surprise. A bit disappointing because the League Cup is something that you can get a bit of glory in if you go through a couple of rounds. But it's like last year. If it is now followed by a nice little run in the league, it's a result that will be forgotten very quickly. Nobody will be too worried about that. If the League 11, the league team, has pieced together some results. And that's what we have to hope for in the next few weeks, really. So not a great surprise, all in all, for me last night.
Mick Robertson makes the point elsewhere on Pompey Sound that although he doesn't care that much about the Cup, it's a good opportunity to keep the bench match sharp and also to give some of the youngsters a run out. And that worked in our favour last night.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and if you can, clearly as Mick is suggesting there, if you can get through 2 or 3 rounds of it, then you've got that many more opportunities for those same players, haven't you? Now, when the second round of this cup comes around, obviously we're not in the EFL Trophy anymore because we're not in the lower 2 divisions. Those players are going to be looking around and wondering where their next game is going to come from. We haven't got a reserve team in a league. So opportunities are limited there. There are benefits to a little cup run, especially if you've got enough players to use a sort of second 11 as we did last night, and you don't have to disrupt the league team too much. So I can see Mick's point there. You just hope that some of those players who were there last night, I'm sure they will have been told by the manager that what they showed wasn't good enough, and hopefully that will back them up a little bit and they'll show a bit more in training, and if they do get onto the bench for a league game, they'll be a bit more ready to perform. And let's not forget others, people like Farrell and Boat and people like that, they've been out injured a long time. You can't expect too much from them too soon coming into a game like that. Let's hope it's just a blip, and actually some of those players do prove to be useful members of the squad as the weeks go by.
Yeah, and quickly on the lad Singer, he made a name for himself in this match. He took his goal really well. Did you think he got in between 2 fairly meaty Reading defenders, and he got his head on the ball first, and then he picked up the ball and sprinted back to the centre circle because there was 90 seconds left. Come on, boys.
That's right. He did all the right things there, didn't he? Yeah. Great for any young player who's trying to come through the ranks to get on in a game like that and to score. And to score at the front end is perfect, isn't it? It's what everybody wants to do. If you're coming through the Pompey ranks as a 15, 16-year-old and then you're playing for the youth team, that is what you're aiming to do. It doesn't matter if it's against Reading in the Cup or Southampton in the league or anybody. And so he's made a few people who perhaps weren't aware of him before sit up and take notice. I'm sure he's made the manager think, right, there's an option for the bench. We're not overdone with strikers, are we? We haven't got much of a backup to Colby. We've got Waddingham, and that's about it really in terms of out-and-out strikers at the moment. So he will probably be in the frame, I would think, for a place on the bench on Saturday, which would be interesting. Pompey might think that they need to send him out on loan somewhere before the window closes end of the month. I hope not. I hope in a way he's allowed to stick around and stake his claim here, because it could be quite an exciting addition, couldn't he?
No doubt about it. I
the Kassam.
just want to play something back to you, which is one of our news items from yesterday. It's some bloke predicting the Oxford game.
So that won't have lasted very long, the Kassam. Our record there is pretty good. And it was one of the 3 away grounds we won at last year in the league, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I think Oxford might struggle a bit this year. They kind of kept pace with us last year. It was a little battle between the two to see who was going to finish higher, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Last year. I think they might struggle this year. I think we might just sneak a little 1-0 win.
Yeah, elsewhere across Pompey Sound, we're constantly saying that your predictions can be worth their weight in gold.
Instead of talking to me every week, can you just play that every week for the rest of the season? Because I might have peaked early. I might have got my one correct prediction in for the first game. I was very happy with that. I was thinking as the game went on, right, I've predicted a little 1-0 win here. We're clearly not going to hold on for 1-0, or we're going to win 4-0. But I was right. I was proved right for a change. And so far, what I said about, I know we've only had one game in the league, but I did see a few comments from those who were at the game saying that Oxford did look quite poor and could be in for a long season, could be in for a bit of a struggle. But no, pleased to get one right, but please don't think that means I'm going to get it right every week.
Fair enough. Let's get your thoughts on the overall on the game then. The feel of the game for you, how Pompey played. You say that Oxford may not have been that good. Maybe we made them look bad. And your thoughts on any individual performances that stood out? Yeah,
from what I've seen of it, Segacic is the obvious one. Took that goal very well, didn't he? Had a bit to do when that ball came loose to him on the edge of the area, but fired it in with his left foot. And I think he said afterwards that's the sort of chance he likes, because he'll always back himself to score from there, which is quite something. We've had a few players down the years that you wouldn't say that about. John Swift, I think, is starting to, in that game, and to a lesser extent in the cup game against Reading, is just starting to show a little bit of a presence and a bit of authority about his game, and could be a useful addition, very useful addition, especially with Marlon Pack now out for, looks like he's out for about 6 weeks, doesn't it, Marlon? Had knee surgery and is not going to be around for a few weeks, which is a blow. So those would be the sort of two that stood out. I think it's too early to start worrying too much about Yang and Bianchini, people like that. I had sort of a few negative comments saying, what does he offer, and so on and so forth. But it's one game, and in some cases less than one game. It's half a game or less. Difficult to judge wingers on one game. They're going to have games where they're a bit anonymous. They're going to have games where they're on fire. So we don't know if either of those are going to turn into another Kamara rather than another Silvera. But we can hope. But no, for an opening day, you don't really mind too much about the performance, I don't think, in the first game, especially away from home. If you come back with the 3 points, it's job done, isn't it? You're off to a winning start. You're up the top half of the table after one game, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, your thoughts now looking ahead to Norwich, and obviously I'm going to get you to do a prediction and might have a fiver on it this time. It would be well worth it. But Norwich have been splashing the cash.
Yeah, they have. Yes, they've spent a fair bit, haven't they? Liam Manning is the manager there now, who we looked at one time, I think, didn't we, as a potential manager? Was it when he was at Oxford? I think he was talked about as at the point where John Messino came in. I think Manning was another contender. Norwich last season didn't impress too much, did they? They started the season with everybody thinking, they could could be playoff contenders. Didn't look that great, I didn't think, when they came down here. Drew 0-0 just before Christmas in the floodlit game, and then of course at Good Friday we went there and hammered them, put 5 past them, didn't we? 5-3. So not sure what to expect from them this season, really. I think I've predicted them another sort of mid-table finish for them, really. They have spent a fair bit. They've got some useful-looking players in there. Lost at home to Millwall, didn't they, first out last week? So some of their fans will be getting a little bit edgy already, as fans these days tend to do. You know, everybody wants immediate results, don't they? And by the nature of football, you know, half the teams in the division aren't going to get immediate results. Some of them will have to wait a few weeks for their best form. Might just be a good time to be playing them, I think. We've won our first game, they haven't. Pressure's on them a little bit to come down here and get something. So yeah, at this stage they would not be among my sort of favourites to be pushing for promotion and playoffs.
Yeah, you see, you've done well with that perception, because I think for a lot of us lesser mortals, when you have a reasonably clear recollection of a side playing above its level, in their case European football and indeed the Premier League, it rather corrupts your view of the team that they are at this exact moment.
Can do, can't it? Yeah, everybody remembers them playing, was it Bayern Munich they played, or Inter Milan? I forget now, or I played both. Robert Fleck scored that famous goal, didn't he? A long time ago, though, and they've been a little bit up and down between Premier and Championship since then. Seem to remember them clinching promotion back to the Premier League at Fratton Park one year. Would have been about 2011, I think, in a night game. But yeah, they're not a team who you see you're playing them next and you think, oh goodness, that's a big team, that's a Premier League team. You know, you don't feel like that about them, I don't think, do you? Norwich. Now, there's a few teams at their sort of level in the Championship this season that I don't think we need to fear. You know, we need to, as managers say, we'll respect them, but we don't need to fear them. And I would put them in that bracket. I would also put people like West Brom, Middlesbrough, maybe even Ipswich and Leicester and people like that in that bracket. You know, they might have been in the Premier League recently, and more recently than us, but doesn't necessarily mean they are going to sweep all before them in this division this season.
We've had a good start to the season. We should get something out of Norwich. You shouldn't say that, but I will. Are we entitled, do you think, to get a little bit ahead of ourselves?
Well, it's tempting to, isn't it? But with Pompey, and probably with any team, you should never get too far ahead, because the run of 3 defeats can just as easily come at you around the corner. You know, just as much as a run of 3 straight wins that you don't expect. But if you think back to last season, and we got 3 draws, didn't we, to start with, and then 3 defeats, I think, and we were still languishing on sort of 7 or 8 points end of September into October. So if we can just get ahead of that curve this year and get something like, I don't know, let's say 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats from the first 6, that's not a bad start. All in all, it's not going to put you top of the table, and it's not going to have the bookmakers running for cover, but it's a solid start, and it just paints a different picture for the season ahead, compared to what we had ahead of us last season. I think I'm right in saying our first win this season has come 71 days earlier than our first win last season. So that's not a bad starting point, is it? Hopefully we won't have to wait till middle of October for the next one. But yeah, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. You know, we're still what are we, 2 weeks and a bit, 2.5 weeks away from the window, the end of the transfer window being open. So there's still likelihood of 2 or 3 more players coming in. I think John Messino would have probably gone to Rich Hughes after last night and said, look, if that performance and that sort of team effort shows us anything, it shows that we are still a bit short on backup in particular areas. So that's a little bit of power to his elbow, isn't it? So yeah, I think on the whole, plenty of reasons to be optimistic at the moment. One
of the things that's changed about football as a result of the Bosnan ruling, which is pretty historic now, but it's very much alive, is that good old pros such as Matt Ritchie and John Swift know how to draw out a negotiation for their signature because it can work to their advantage. Now, Ritchie is taking a long time to make his switch, the switch that he's almost certainly going to make, and that could just as much be down to him as down to Pompey and Reading if it is Reading.
Yeah, we just don't know what's going on behind the scenes with that one, do we? It does seem to be Reading does seem to be the likely destination for him, which I've said last week, and I'll probably say this every week until it's done. I do think it's a shame, and I wish all parties would reconsider, and I wish we could keep him for another season, because I still think he'd have a big part to play from what we've seen so far. Pompey seem, probably because of the chunk of the wage bill that he takes up. It's a proportion of the wage bill that they have plans for, probably, and they're quite happy to move him on, and they're allowing him to go effectively on a free transfer, I think, aren't they? So I don't think there would be any sticking point with Pompey. You would think that it would, the main sort of debating point would be Ritchie talking to Reading about what they can pay him. You would imagine. So for that reason, I think it probably will happen. I think he'll be off before the end of August. I hope there's a change of heart by everybody, and he's not. But yeah, there's still a lot of player power, isn't there? Players are very well rewarded at the top end of football now, and even away from the top end. You go down. I cover a lot of non-league, and I've spoken to a couple of managers this summer who say that the expectations of players, even at non-league level, in terms of what they're worth and what they should be paid for playing once a week and training 4 hours a week, is quite unbelievable compared to what they were getting even a year or two ago. So that must be true of players at the top level as well, mustn't it? If player A hears what player B is earning, and he knows that player C is also earning similar to that, then that's a good negotiating point for him, isn't it? I'm not. None of this is directed at Ritchie, by the way. I think Ritchie is probably quite realistic about what his earning potential is now at his end of his career. There'll be some ins and outs over the next couple of weeks at Pompey. Ritchie going by the exit will be one of them. Might even be one or two others that go. Hopefully nobody vital, and certainly 2 or 3 coming in as well.
We've been itching to get your thoughts on this one ever since it came up, and that is knowing your full-blooded integrity, the honesty and decency of all journalists, of course. What did you think about John Messino's admittance that sometimes he lies?
Well, it was no surprise, was it? Because I think it's almost become a running joke, hasn't it? Over last season and into this season. If he says Regan Poole is out for 6 weeks, you kind of half expect to see him in the team next week. The other, with the boot on the other foot, sometimes he might say somebody has got just a minor knock, and then you won't see him for 2 or 3 months because it's actually not a minor knock, although it might have seemed it at the time. I suppose the problem with it is if you do it too often, then nobody's going to believe a word you say about your team news and your injuries and your availability, and you don't know if that's a very healthy position to be in for a club and their own fans. You can see why he wants to keep the truth from opposition teams and clubs and managers. But that also then involves him sort of pulling the wool over the eyes of his own fans and causing a bit of worry about a player when there doesn't need to be a worry. I think you've got to be selective with it if you're the manager. I think if you don't want to say a particular player is going to be available for the next game when you know he is, just hedge around it. So we're not too sure when Fred Bloggs will be back yet. We'll have a look at him tomorrow or something. There's ways of doing it without an out lies. But at the same time, I think fans think it's quite funny. I think it's it's become a little game to listen to what he says about a player on a Wednesday afternoon or a Thursday at the press conference, and then try to sort of decipher that and work out what it actually means, and then find out one way or the other 2:00 on Saturday. So it's like I say, a little running joke at the moment, but hopefully it won't get out of hand.
I mean, there are shocks. So when the team sheet came out for the friendly against the Dutch, there was no Colby Bishop anywhere, and people were taken aback, a bit worried, and then no Josh Murphy either. And we still, if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, and you could be able to, we still don't know exactly what the story is there with Josh.
We haven't seen him yet, have we? But I think the manager said he picked up I can't remember if it was hamstring, felt his hamstring, didn't he, in a game or at training, and was likely to be out. It was very minor, and he was likely to be out 2 or 3 weeks, I think he said. So we have to, as far as we know, we have to trust that is an accurate portrayal of the situation, and he could be back. I mean, that I think the injury was a couple of weeks ago, so he could even be back. We might even see him against Norwich at the weekend, and I think if we don't, I think we'll probably see him quite soon after that. Yes, but the other thing is, of course, when a team sheet comes out and there's somebody missing, you don't then, the media don't get the chance to ask the manager about that until after that game has been played. So fans and others will spend the whole of that game thinking, I wonder where so-and-so is, and we'd be better if he was playing. And there might be a very good reason, injury or illness or whatever. Might be a personal reason he's not available. Might be a very good reason why he's not there, but you won't know about it until afterwards. It's the way the sort of the whole media side of it works, isn't it? And sometimes the media will be, John Messinio might say something in a press conference that's not the whole truth, but he might be able to give his contacts in the local media a little steer as well, that they can then sort of reflect in their reporting. It's the way it works. It's all part and parcel of football today. It's a bit of a game, really. A bit of a game of chess, really, isn't it?
That's
Not wanting to give your tactics away and your fine details away to next week's opposition.
Sounds as though what you're saying is that certain key sports journalists, football journalists, are occasionally taken into confidence by the manager and told, handle this one carefully, I'll let you have it, in exchange for you being as nice about me as possible if a couple of results back-to-back don't go our way. Does that happen?
Well, to an extent, but not to the extent that an independent, you've got two different types of media. You've got club media, who are club employees and are there to put out what the club wants them to put out. And then you've got independent media. So in our case, that's people like Radio Solent, the News, the local news agencies, Express FM, and so on and so forth. No one from the organisations that are independent of the club are ever going to agree to anything unreasonable. So they're not going to have a relationship with a manager, whoever it is. It's John Messino at the moment, but whoever it is, they're not going to have a relationship with a manager where they're under some sort of pressure to be nice, when they want to be critical. If they want, generally speaking, if a local paper or radio station or whatever feels it needs to be critical of a decision or a performance or a player or an individual, they will be. And I don't think they would agree to any sort of arrangement that prevented them from being so. Having said that, yes, there's a relationship. There's got to be trust on both sides, really. So a manager, if he's going to tell local journalists or whatever journalists are in front of him a little bit more than he wants them to report, he's got to trust them. And they will have had to show over time that in their reporting of a situation and their reporting of a conversation with the manager, that they can be trusted to do it in a responsible way. It's a delicate line sometimes, but that's the world we're in today, really.
It is, and the point we are at today in this Steve Bone piece, Steve Bone show, call it what you like, is where we ask you for your prediction. And I've got my pen is hovering over a piece of paper here because I'm definitely going to have a fiver on whatever you say the score's going to be. Got to.
It's hovering over a betting slip that says, £500.
Oh, it's all electronic now.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, it's all on the app, isn't it? I'm going to predict Pompey 3, Norwich 1.
Wow.
I'm still confident at the moment. It could all come crashing down by 2:20 on Saturday afternoon, but I think tails will be up after our win last weekend. I think you remember how good we were at home last season for most of last season. Not at the start. It took a little while, didn't we? But once Colby came into that team, we were very good at home. We were very difficult to play against and difficult to defend against. There were a number of games where we scored 3 or 4. So I just think we might carry that on for a little while. Don't think we're going to win every home game or anything mad like that, and I don't think we're going to win our first 6 games of the season or anything mad like that. But I think we might have a little bit too much for Norwich at this time.
Steve, as ever, thank you so much. Talk soon.
Look forward to it.